It's just kind of who I am. I want to pour into my team as much as possible, and I'm pretty in tune with my body. I can read a room pretty well, and so when I see we're lacking a little bit, you got to step up. But if we're good, you're just there to encourage. And
Women's basketball just went through a massive shakeup, and weirdly, it didn't even happen on the court. When the news dropped that Caitlin Clark locked in a multi-year deal with NBC Universal as a special contributor to their basketball coverage, everything kind of stopped. This wasn't some normal rookie endorsement or brand collab. This was her stepping in and flipping the entire media conversation on its head. What Clark basically told everyone was simple: she doesn't need the WNBA's approval, and she definitely doesn't need to play in the league's shiny new off-season project just to stay relevant. She found another lane, and while the league office responded the way it usually does, with cold, uncomfortable silence, one player wasn't interested in playing along: Sophie Cunningham, Phoenix Mercury guard. The same player who's been cast as the villain in the Caitlin Clark storyline for months now. And it looks like she's had enough. Quietly, through comments, reactions, and what she hasn't said, Cunningham has been calling out the hypocrisy eating the league alive. She's pointing straight at the jealousy, the bad money decisions, and the behind-the-scenes politics that are threatening to wreck the biggest opportunity women's basketball has ever had. To understand why Sophie Cunningham is running out of patience, you have to understand just how big Caitlin Clark's move really was. For decades, there's been an unspoken rule in the WNBA: you finish the season, then you pack your bags and head overseas, Russia, Turkey, China, wherever the paycheck is, because the league's salary alone isn't enough to live comfortably at a superstar level. More recently, that script turned into pressure to join league-approved off-season leagues and camps. Caitlin Clark took that script and threw it straight in the trash. Instead of grinding in another gym, she's joining NBC. That means Sunday night football broadcasts, Big Ten Saturday night, a debut at Madison Square Garden, but not in a jersey. No sweat, no loose balls. She'll be in a blazer, sitting next to legends like Vince Carter and Carmelo Anthony. That kind of mainstream exposure this early? No woman basketball player has ever had it. She's not just branding herself as a WNBA star. She's placing herself shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in men's sports. And the silence from the WNBA office says everything. They know they're losing control of the narrative. And that fear, that quiet panic, is exactly what Sophie Cunningham is reacting to, because all of this is happening against the backdrop of the new Unrivaled League, the 3-on-3 league founded by Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier, two massive stars who also happen to be high-ranking officials in the WNBA Players Association. They went hard after Clark. Reports say she was offered more than $1 million in equity, with a deal structure people compared to Lionel Messi's Miami contract. The pressure was real. Behind the scenes, the message was clear: if you don't join, you're not supporting the sisterhood. You're expected to use your fame to make this league successful. When Clark said no and chose NBC instead, resentment inside certain veteran circles boiled over. To them, it felt like betrayal. But this is where Sophie Cunningham sees things differently. She's been around long enough to recognize a smart business decision when she sees one. Cunningham understands that Unrivaled comes with a built-in conflict of interest. Active players running a league and pressuring other players to participate creates a strange, uncomfortable power dynamic. By walking away from that pressure, Clark showed she can't be bought and she can't be bullied. Meanwhile, the media spent the last year trying to sell a fake blood feud between Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark. They replay the hard fouls, the trash talk, the physical screens, painting Sophie as the league enforcer sent to put the rookie in her place. And yes, Sophie plays physical. That's who she is. That's her game. But off the court, she's one of the sharpest business thinkers in the league. While other veterans were throwing shade on podcasts or downplaying Clark's talent, Cunningham was the one telling the truth. During the charter flight debates, she openly said what everyone knew but wouldn't admit: the only reason they weren't flying commercial anymore was Caitlin Clark. She shattered the idea that the league's growth was purely organic. She gave credit where it belonged. Her frustration now seems rooted in a league that's more than happy to cash the checks Clark generates, but refuses to give her the respect she's earned. Cunningham looks around locker rooms and basically asks, "Are you serious right now?" She sees the chartered flights, the sold-out arenas, the TV deals, and she knows exactly who made that happen. That's why her response to the NBC News matters so much. The media wants her angry. They want a clip of her saying Clark doesn't deserve it, and Sophie refuses to give them that. Instead, her frustration is aimed at the system and the critics. She understands that when one star rises, everyone benefits. If Caitlin Clark becomes a massive media figure on NBC, That attention circles right back to the WNBA when the season starts. Cunningham is calling out how short-sighted the bitterness is. It's like she's saying, let her get paid, because that money helps all of us eventually. That kind of honesty breaks the unspoken code. Usually, WNBA veterans present a united front even when it makes no sense. Cunningham is stepping out of line in favor of reality. And in such a clique-driven league, that's borderline revolutionary. And that leads straight into the mean girl culture she's exposing. We've seen it. The comments from legends like Cheryl Swoops, trying to rewrite history with false stats. The awkward freeze-outs during Team USA selections. That unmistakable energy of "you can't sit with us" aimed directly at Clark. By taking the NBC deal, Clark didn't just find another table, she bought the whole restaurant. And Sophie Cunningham seems to be the only one enjoying the irony. While others post vague messages about loyalty and grind, Cunningham is out there living her life. Completely unbothered by Clark's success. It makes the rest of the league's behavior look small. When Sophie explodes, it's rarely loud. It's in what she refuses to do. She won't join the hate train. She talks hoops. She talks business. And she refuses to tear down the player who's keeping the lights on because money talks. And right now, Caitlin Clark is shouting. The numbers are what really fuel the jealousy Cunningham keeps pointing out. The WNBA max salary is around $250,000. Unrivaled offered serious money, but it still meant playing, risking injury. Grinding through camps in Miami. The NBC deal? Rumors say it's massive. Likely way more than her WNBA salary without touching the court. She sits in a studio, breaks down the game, and builds her brand. Cunningham, who's fought for every contract she's ever earned, recognizes how smart that is. Her frustration spikes when other players act like Clark owes them something. Clark figured out how to make millions without wrecking her body in the offseason. That's not betrayal. That's a blueprint. And Sophie is practically screaming for others to take notes instead of throwing shade. There's also a darker layer that Cunningham keeps hinting at. Unrivaled was founded by the president and vice president of the Players Association. There are whispers, speculation. Of course, that star players feel heavy political pressure to join in order to validate union leadership's business interests. Saying no could mean alienating the very people who control union power. That's risky. Cunningham, always independent, likely sees the hypocrisy. How are union leaders supposed to protect Clark's best interests if they also want her as an employee in the offseason? It's a tangled mess. So when Sophie talks about keeping it real, she's signaling that what fans hear publicly doesn't match what's happening privately. Clark's rejection of Unrivaled wasn't just about scheduling. It was about freedom. And Sophie Cunningham respects freedom all season long. Sources and rumors have pointed to divided locker rooms across the league. On one side, you've got the Clark supporters, mostly younger players and business-minded vets who see the bigger picture. On the other, the traditionalists who swear everything was just fine before Caitlin Clark ever showed up. Sophie Cunningham sits right in the middle of that divide. She's a veteran. She's tough. She's part of the established order. But she refuses to be music blind. Her so-called explosion isn't chaos, it's a disruption of the locker room echo chamber. Every time she does an interview and refuses to bite on the race war or the generational war, she's actively tearing down the narratives pushed by people rooting for Clark to fail. She's proving you can be a ruthless competitor on the court without turning into a bitter hater off it. And the media deserves some accountability here, something Cunningham has delivered more than once. Networks like ESPN and social media highlight pages thrive on the Sophie hates Caitlin storyline. They post a clip of a hard foul with zero context and slap a caption on it about bad blood. But if you actually watch what happens after the whistle, the post-game handshakes, the interactions, there's respect there. Cunningham's recent pushback against these narratives is really about reclaiming her own image. She's not letting the media turn her into a pawn used to attack Clark. By refusing to play the villain after the NBC announcement, she completely wrecks their script. They wanted jealousy. They wanted outrage. They wanted jealousy. They wanted outrage. Instead, she's minding her business, getting ready for the season, and quietly validating Clark's move as game-recognizing game for decades. The WNBA has held the power. They control schedules, fines, exposure, everything. But with NBC, Clark now has a platform that may actually be bigger than the league itself. Sunday Night Football is the most watched show in America. If Clark brings up a WNBA issue on that broadcast, millions of people hear it instantly. That's a megaphone the league can't mute. That reality terrifies old guard executives. And Sophie Cunningham, someone who's clashed with officiating and league politics before, understands exactly how valuable that leverage is. Her support for players maximizing their worth lines up perfectly with Clark's decision. Cunningham is reacting to the idea that players should stay obedient and grateful. She represents the modern athlete, confident, stylish, outspoken, and fully aware of her value. She watches Clark use that leverage and instead of feeling threatened, she looks validated. It proves players actually have power if they're bold enough to use it. And then there's the elephant in the room. A huge portion of the discourse around Clark has turned racial. Some claim her popularity exists only because of her demographic. Others argue the backlash against her is racially driven. Music, it's messy, it's toxic, and it's deeply divisive. Sophie Cunningham has been dragged into that fire too, often accused of targeting Clark, but she's consistently shut those race-bait narratives down by doing something radical, focusing on basketball. Her frustration is often a rejection of sociological hot takes. She treats Clark like a hooper, not a symbol. By tuning out the noise and zeroing in on the game and the business, Cunningham exposes how ridiculous the music critics sound when they obsess over identity. Instead of reality, she just wants to play ball and get paid. And she sees Clark doing exactly the same thing. So what happens to Unrivaled without Clark? Honestly, it probably loses its shine. And the organizers know it. That's where a lot of the bitterness comes from. They were banking on the Caitlin Clark stimulus package to lock in TV deals and sell tickets. Without her, they're just another startup league. Cunningham understands that math. She knows once the golden child is gone, the economics get a lot tougher. And her frustration likely spikes when she hears players trashing Clark, knowing those same players were quietly hoping she'd save their business. It's the ultimate hypocrisy. We don't like you, but please come rescue our league. Sophie is way too sharp to let that slide without rolling her eyes. Looking ahead to the next WNBA season, music, everything has changed. Clark is coming back to Indiana not just as a second-year point guard, but as an NBC broadcaster backed by a media giant. She's untouchable now. The rookie hazing phase is over. She won. Sophie Cunningham knows it. Her refusal to engage in the drama is her way of adapting to the new reality. She's basically telling the rest of the league, get on board or get left behind. Anyone still holding grudges is fighting a battle that's already over. Cunningham was supposed to be the villain in this story. The media cast her as the antagonist, the enforcer, the rival, the problem. But after the dust settled on Caitlin Clark's NBC announcement, she emerged as something way more interesting. A truth teller. While much of the league sits in jealous silence, upset that Clark chose network television over their 3-on-3 project, Cunningham kept it real. She exposed a league that loves Clark's money but resents her influence. She called out fake narratives and terrible business instincts, and in doing music she proves she's not Clark's enemy. She's just a competitor who respects the hustle. Caitlin Clark has permanently altered the game, and Sophie Cunningham appears to be the only one brave enough to say it out loud. The WNBA now has a choice. Music, stay bitter, or listen, swallow the pride, and appreciate what's unfolding right in front of them. But if history tells us anything, the drama is only getting started.